YouTube live. Every Sunday night I go live. I want to thank everybody who's tuning in live. For those of you who are watching the recorded version, that's also okay. It's going to be fun either way. Today we have a very special mission. As always, I'm going to talk through the next week, but now I'm going further into the future than before. So in some of these other lives, I've talked about just generally some retrospectives on Pluto and Capricorn, Saturn and Aquarius, and what to expect when those planets change signs in the immediate future. But today I'm going to look into 2026. So 2026 is going to be a very crucial transition globally, and this will kind of make 2023 look like cakewalk. Rachel, hello. Thank you for joining. It's good to be with you tonight. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a tectonic shift in 2026. So that's all because we're switching from Earth and water. We have a lot of Earth and water in the sky, you know, right now with Uranus and Taurus, Pluto and Cap, and Neptune and Pisces. That's all going to change. Sarah, hello. Thank you for joining. That's all going to change in 2026. We're moving into an age of fire and air. That's going to be really fast paced. A lot of changes on the horizon. I'm going to talk about what that means. But first, as promised, the first segment is going to be looking at the week ahead. Victoria, thank you for joining. And this is a nice time to go live. We actually have the Pisces new moon in a couple hours here. So I hope you've been setting intentions or planning to at least. I've discussed this on my TikTok, my Instagram. You really want to allow sudden downloads to come in. Allow them to come in through visualization techniques, through meditation, through stream of consciousness writing. Frankie, Lindsay, thank you for joining. Because Mercury, Uranus are squaring each other here. Mercury's applying the square to Uranus here, and this is really about jumping into the higher octave of Mercury and having these sudden visions, sudden changes in awareness, sudden shifts in perception. Crystal, thank you for joining. So this is a time of radical change, but in the intellect, the intellectual plane. So I experienced this morning. I was on a run and I had this huge epiphany about what the Bible is all about, the New Testament, which is, I haven't actually read the Bible all the way through. I don't consider myself to be religious, but I had a sudden epiphany about, and this is just a quick aside, but I really think that the Bible is the reader, and hear me out because I just kind of came up with this, but I was thinking, like, is the reader of the Bible, the audience, the Virgin Mary? Because I feel like the Bible is kind of about this idea of the Holy Grail of, like, bringing your Kundalini energy up and then experiencing Christ consciousness, but by sort of abstaining from, physical activity. So for physical intimacy. So I thought it was kind of an interesting perspective. I was like, well, the Holy Grail kind of goes out like this at the top and at the bottom. It has a spine in the middle. So it's kind of like the spine, the chakra system. We're bringing all the creative energy up here and into that sort of crown chakra. I thought that was pretty interesting. And I thought about how our culture actually externalizes those things by making us want more carnal desires as a way to deplete the base of that Holy Grail. So I think the Holy Grail being the key to life, it's like you transmute that procreative energy into the Christ consciousness, and then, Christ would be unconditional love at that point. So you experience this sort of exalted state, you experience this unconditional love by working up the chakra system, working up the caduceus, and that matches with astrology. So I found that to be a really interesting theory that I still want to develop, but you have it here, world premiere of my random religious theory. But those are the types of downloads you can get today. So this is a very special day, and I think astrologers have been pretty aligned on this new moon. I've heard that some astrologers say that this new moon is sort of a reality check in some way because of Saturn, but I don't really see it that way. I think it's actually a very nice new moon to not sell yourself short. So with Pisces, yes, it can be about delusions, but it's like this new moon is at 1 degree. So it's like at the Aries degree, this is about aspiring, and sometimes that gets us in the clouds. But the thing is that Saturn will shift into Pisces around the full moon 2 weeks later. And so on the one hand, you could see that as, oh, Saturn is a downer and Saturn is putting us in our place. But I don't really see it that way. I actually see Saturn as coming in from behind to say, all right, let's stabilize this mission. Let's assemble the crew. So just as an example, it's, last week or a couple days ago, I was out to lunch talking about a new creative idea with somebody. And, we started, all of a sudden I realized, maybe my creative idea has legs, and maybe I can assemble a team, and like maybe we could actually collaborate on this, and maybe it could go somewhere, and maybe like in a few years it could be a stable sort of part of my life. Like it could be a really significant part of my life. So you want to think like that right now. So like, what are some creative ideas you have? What are spiritual missions you're on that you want to go on right now? What are some healing journeys that you want to embark on? And you want to think about, how can I stretch that out? How can I stretch that out for a couple of years, even 3 years? And I'm saying it 3 years because that's how long Saturn's in Pisces. So consider this new moon in a way to be kind of an introduction and a precursor to Saturn and Pisces for you. Now, technically speaking, you want to bring something to fruition 2 weeks from now on the Virgo full moon, and you actually also want to complete a cycle 6 months from now on the Pisces full moon. So the lunar cycles have a couple different layers to them. But in this case, I'm saying go for it. Go for the 3-year plan. Go for the long-term plan. But I'm not just saying that with anything. Like, don't, I've had new moons where I've said, manifest a long-term thing, set intentions on something that's stable. But you have to look at where you have Pisces. Where do you have Pisces in your birth chart? So that's where you can stabilize something. But even if you're watching this video not live, if you're watching this video, during the week, still think about like how you can actually make a concrete plan. Get a Google Doc out. Get a spreadsheet out. I mean, honestly, it can look kind of boring that way, but that's what you need. Saturn appreciates that. Saturn appreciates like an actual structure and a structured approach to creative thoughts. So with Pisces, it's like, how am I going to build that spiritual network, or how am I going to create an online community of spiritualists, and collaborate with other people? Or how am I going to make this album if I'm a musician? So there's big things that can happen for you on this new moon. But again, allow the Mercury-Uranus square to flood you with downloads, because I don't think it's going to happen from rationality alone. It's also intuition and visualization techniques, like maybe even scrying. I don't know. Maybe even scrying would be interesting for you. So let's not belabor this, because I do think that I've done a good job of baking that. So let's get into Monday. So Monday, we still have a Pisces new moon, and the moon is increasing in light at that point. So we're getting out of the darkness. And Frankie, you have Pisces in your 6th. So that makes sense. Yes, you're incorporating the divine into the everyday. I like that. I think that that's actually really, it's almost like with that too. It's like, what is your long-term process, right? What is your long-term work process, so that you don't have to, you don't even, it's second nature after a while. But heading into Monday, Venus goes into Aries. I mean, that's a big deal, because the Venus placement here, you have to think about this new moon as like, okay, so the new moon is at 1 degree, Venus is at 29 degrees. That's like a gateway, right? So that's like the 2 pillars. That's the 2 pillars we're talking about. We're talking about the 2 pillars holding up the exalted spirituality, holding up the heavens, holding up the sky. And we know that in esoterica, we have this concept of the 2 pillars very consistently. So I would think about that. I'm kind of channeling right now, and that's why I love going live. But I'm just seeing like 2 pillars, right? So 2 pillars are right here. What are you holding up? What are you holding up? Are you holding up this idea of like, hey, I want to inspire a million people. I want to create a community, or I want to write the next whatever hit song. With Pisces, you want to dream big, but you want to put that dream on sort of a, put them on these pillars. So I'm glad this is why I like going live again. I'm glad I came up with that. I think that, shortly thereafter, Venus goes into Aries, and that's going to really activate cardinal placements. So that's interesting. So it kind of leaves a gift for the cardinal signs. So if you have a lot of mutable energy in your chart, so Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces, then this new moon is great for manifesting. But, if you have some cardinal placements too, I like the fact that Venus goes right into Aries right after that, pretty much, and starts to activate the cardinal signs value systems, their search for more of what they value. So that's nice. And then Jupiter gets in the 10th degree of Aries, where it hasn't been for 12 years. I mean, Jupiter just went up to the 8th degree, it was Scorpionic degree, went backwards last year. So now we're getting in well past that 8th degree. So Jupiter is marching forward, expanding our vision, giving us extrasensory perception, giving us healing capabilities with Chiron. And that Pisces moon is still active tomorrow. So even if you miss tonight and you're not so sure about, what am I manifesting exactly? I think this is okay. Okay. So like allow yourself to dream tonight and have vivid dreams. If that Mercury Uranus square gives you a download in the middle of the night and you wake up tomorrow and you're like, I really wish that I had said this, add it to your journal. Don't worry about it. Pisces 3rd house. Yeah, let's just go through the houses. So just really quick. So first house would be the self and self-identity, self-projection, persona. Second house is value systems, values. Third house is communication, learning processes, neighbors, siblings, just communication channels as well. Fourth house would be the home, the foundation, the inner world. The fifth house is your creative hobbies, and also, just creative ventures, things that bring out your happiness, your inner happiness. Sixth house would be your daily work processes and health routines. And seventh house is significant partnerships and business partners. Eighth house is also investments and finance and other people's resources, joint resources, emotional intimacy, taxes, and also your intuition, your subconscious. Ninth house is traveling and, publishing. It's, belief systems and philosophies. 10th house is career and public sort of persona. 11th house is groups, organizations, social media, and then the 12th house is about spirituality, surrender, and places of isolation. So just think about any of those domains. So track that, right? Synchronize that with where you have Pisces. Where do you have Pisces? Which of those houses is Pisces in? That's where you want to start that new journey, initiate something. And then the Virgo full moon is in 2 weeks. So that's going to be the opposite house. And that's where you're bringing something to a completion. So, but let's go into Monday. We still have the Pisces moon. So again, you can audit and change your intentions a little bit. I think that's okay. If you get a really profound dream tonight, you can alter your intentions. I feel fine with that. Then on Tuesday, look, this is a long Pisces moon. This is a really long period because the Pisces moon starts at 1 degree. So we really get 2 days of a Pisces, like 2 full days of that sort of new moon energy, strictly in Pisces there. And then into Wednesday, Tuesday night, really, the moon enters Aries, starts to form a conjunction with Venus. And what I really like is, I actually like Wednesday quite a bit. Tuesday, there may be a little bit of fog, because Mars is squaring that moon. It's a little agitated, but I think the Aries moon, it's conjunct Chiron eventually, but Jupiter's right there. So Wednesday would be a really good healing day for relationships. Catherine's birthday is on Wednesday, so that's a really interesting solar return for you. Well, you obviously want to look at exactly what time your solar return is. It might be Tuesday night or Thursday morning or something, but you're gonna have that Aries moon most likely, and in a conjunction with Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter. I think Wednesday is a good day to reconcile a relationship. So if you're in a tough spot with somebody, you're not sure how to heal from something that's happened in the past, I think choose Wednesday for that. And then heading into Thursday night, still have the Aries moon, sextiling Saturn. I think that's strong. And then by Friday night, we get the Taurus moon conjunct Uranus. Sudden, Friday is very important actually. So Friday is important because the moon will join up with Uranus, which is activating those sudden epiphanies. So if you have a sudden download tonight that you're not completed, it's like the mosaic and the painting has not been completely captured by you yet. Friday is when that vision is really supercharged. So pay attention to Friday. It's a really good day for even collaboration as well, doing something on social media. And then Saturday, the moon squares Saturn on Saturday. So that's kind of interesting. Saturday feels a little bit more like a reality check a little bit, but it doesn't have to be negative. It's almost like I'm having a very serious conversation with somebody about how tangible and how realistic are my goals. And then into Sunday, which I'll track next week, we get into a Gemini moon, and that's a little weird too, I guess. So I think next weekend is more of again, a studious, serious conversation of like, okay, we're putting a fine point on this thing, or we're concluding this thing, or we're solidifying this plan. So that's your week. That's a busy week. I've covered a lot there. I think it's a very ethereal week, and it's very ungrounded in some ways, but you want that right now. Because, again, like, I wish I could talk about my idea, but I can't, because I'm trying to keep it under wraps. But basically, like, I think about what happened to me a few days ago. Like, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and it just hit me that, like, wow, I actually could make this new venture work. Like, I have this new idea for like a venture that I think really synthesizes all my skills. And I originally, in my business plan for the year was saying, I don't even want to tackle that this year. Like, I don't think I'm ready, or I don't think it's like I have time for it. But in talking with my friend, I was like, I think this has legs. I think I could do this now. I think I could actually jump on this year. And I think this could actually be like what I become, how I make my name, and how I make a name for myself, and how I become what I become known for. Like, that's like interesting stuff. That's Piscean dreams. That's saying, like, what if I could create magic? What if I could create magic? What if I could, sell out, a venue, all like, and go on a tour of sorts, which I'm already kind of giving away some of my ideas there. But anyways, you'll hear more about it soon, but it's very exciting. And anyways, so those are the types of things you can dream up during this time. Rachel, I will let you and everybody know about what it is. I think you already know what it is. If you've seen my birth chart, you already know what it is. So it's the birth chart of a magician on stage, of sorts. So let's talk about the future. NYC, we're getting a request for New York. Yes, I would love to go. I used to live in New York, so I'd love to go back, sort of a homecoming of sorts. And I'm sure I'll make a pit stop there on this tour, this grand tour that I'm scheming up. So let's talk about the other piece of this live. So for those of you, and by the way, if you haven't caught my live before, I would definitely invite you to subscribe to my YouTube. It means a lot to me. YouTube is where I can have these, a little bit longer discussions on astrology topics. And, I think that, it's really important for me to grow my audience on YouTube. So I really appreciate that support. Also subscribe to my Instagram. Why did I say subscribe? Just follow me on Instagram and follow me on TikTok. And if you want a reading from me, of course, you can get one through my website and through the link that I'll put down here. So let's talk about the future, though. So I've discussed some retrospective placements of Pluto in Capricorn, which we're finishing up, and Saturn in Aquarius, which we're finishing up, and I've looked at a range of next couple of years, next 2 years. But I do want to talk about an even bigger shift, to be honest, and that is 2026. So 2026 is really exciting, but it's very it's a little daunting at the same time. So I want to kind of help everybody and myself really talk through this, right? Let's all talk through this and prepare for 2026, because I think it's a shift that's kind of like a line of demarcation where there's no going back. It's kind of like a before and after. It's like a BC AD kind of thing. Now, that's not to say that 2023 and 4 and 5 are not important, but 2026 kind of eclipses all of that. Because we're going to get a lot of these outer planets are going to shift their polarities. So, and I'm kind of getting a download about this. Maybe it's like a pole shift or something in the Earth. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. But it feels like that. It feels like a total pole shift, a total reset, and it's not really, the world is not recognizable at that point. Now, why is this? So let's just go through this. And I wish I could share my screen, but I'm filming this on my phone. But so if you have a chart in front of you, by the way, if you have a software platform in front of you, just check out May 1st, 2026. So I've just set that as a date for observation, but it's actually interesting because I just looked at May 1st, 2026 without necessarily a clear plan as to why it's May 1st, but I stumbled upon a Scorpio full moon. I mean, that's interesting. The fact that I found a full moon is actually it's pretty interesting. So I'm going to look at this chart as a barometer for 2026. And Catherine, yes, I'm doing your reading on May 1st. And I've been talking about this I've been thinking about the month of May a lot this week, by the way. And yes, all the planets in our solar system are having a pole shift, yeah, I believe that. There's definitely been a change in the vibration. We think about even the photon light coming in, there's less obstruction. So we get more light, coming in. I believe that, yes. I think that there's just like a lot of shifts in the atmosphere itself. So anyways, what's happening in 2026? So we have Neptune in Aries, all of a sudden. We have Pluto already in Aquarius, but we also have Uranus in Gemini, and we have Saturn still in Aries. So right now, just to give you the picture, we have Pluto in Cap, which is an earth sign, Neptune in Pisces, which is a water sign, and Uranus in Taurus, which is an earth sign. So that's a lot of earth and water, feminine energy. It's about preserving and protecting. And I'm saying feminine, by the way, in an esoteric sense. So in astrology, we have masculine and feminine energy. So right now, we have a lot of feminine energy. So right now, Pluto in Capricorn is about preserving power, accumulating power. Neptune in Pisces is about stepping into our intuition. Uranus in Taurus is about resetting our sense of security and values. And eventually, in 2026, it's like we're just in this paradigm shift. We're getting into this very masculine energy. It's positive charged, and it's forward-looking, it's futuristic, and it's really fast-paced. And so, society is already changing pretty quickly. There's the news, of course, this week. Microsoft's AI, Bing, was just going like completely apeshit over like questions that a journalist was asking. So it's like AI has already become unhinged. Like AI is not even something that like people necessarily would trust anyways, but now it's like we're wondering, so when the AI becomes sentient, what does that mean for us? What are the implications? Now, I think about that not just in the terms of, is AI dangerous, which is a topic which is totally a valid topic to discuss. But right now, what I'm really thinking about is AI's sophistication. So when AI becomes so sophisticated, which it already is, that it can replace the vast majority of jobs. What do we do about that? So that's really what I look at this AI from the angle of like, yes, some people, there will be pushback, backlash. Some people will not want to work with AI. Some people will want to be very cautious about it. But what happens when you have a lot of fire and air in the sky all of a sudden in 2026, like it's all systems go. So fire and air, so just to break this down. So all of astrology is founded on duality. So the reason that the universe exists is because there's duality, things are split. And when things are split and you create more, it's exponential growth of matter and material. And when you create those splits, it creates duality. And so duality is the reconciliation of opposites. And that creates, expansion and time and all these things. So astrology is founded on duality. So it's basically the feminine and masculine, negative and positive, yin and yang. So we have all these archetypes. Now, earth and water are always compatible with each other. So if you take Taurus and Pisces, that's compatible, and fire and air is always compatible. So if you took Libra and Sag, that would be compatible. So that's a really easy way to quickly build a foundation for yourself in astrology. But, there's other traits, right? And there's a reason that earth and water are compatible. Because if you think about dropping water, if you think about dropping a rock as well with earth, like that's downward movement. If you think about fire and air, we're thinking about fire going upwards. We're thinking about air and the wind connecting everything and pushing everything around. So fire and air are much more outward and active, and earth and water are inward and passive. And it doesn't mean that one is stronger than the other, obviously. We're talking about really two opposites that complete each other in the schema here. Now, another trait, though, to think about in terms of this 2026 prediction is the fact that earth and water are slightly more risk averse. So earth and water are a little bit more, quote unquote, conservative. And I don't mean that in a political sense. But if you think about like Cancer and Capricorn, people with a lot of Cancer and Capricorn in their charts are going to like worry about how much gas they have in their car or how much savings they have. Even Scorpio, Taurus as well. But if you think about like Sag and Gemini kind of placements or Aries, that's a little bit less concerned about that. It's more concerned about like going on these adventures and taking risks and taking chances and saying, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to go to like, I'm just going to go to Greece. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to book the trip and worry about, the consequences later. So the reason I'm kind of taking you through that is because you have to take a macro view. Like, I'm not going to tackle all of 2026 in in one live session, but I think like there's a really powerful way to tap into it right away. So if you look at the chart for 2026 and the energy of 2026, you can just step into that and automatically see this from a macro view. We have a huge shift going from one polarity to the other. And when we have fire and air, it's like, okay, that's very risk averse, or sorry, risk loving. So fire and air, as opposed to earth and water, is very risk loving. It's risk positive. So it's saying, all right, like let's go forward. Let's dare to be different. Let's dare to go on an adventure. Let's dare to take the first step. So it's a little bit more, and especially with fire placements, it's a little bit more risky actually. So what does this mean? Let's break this down. So first of all, we already have Pluto in Aquarius by this point. So Pluto will be fully in Aquarius by late 2024, I believe. And once Pluto is in Aquarius, there is this subconscious collective urge to innovate. And that's when you're going to see the singularity with technology. You're going to see sentient AI. You're going to see robots do jobs that were previously completely designated for humans. So things that we never thought we would be replaced by. So let's include astrologers, right? Like let's throw astrologers in the mix. So eventually an AI, I guarantee you, is going to be able to watch my videos or observe me doing readings for people and just replicate my methodology completely to a T. So like someone, and that could actually be very useful for me, right? So it's like honestly, like I would love to do more readings. If I always joke with my clients, like I wish I could clone myself so I could like read more people. And, eventually, I'm not saying I would take this up because I have like a lot of moral issues with that. And I don't know if I would be comfortable with it, but like theoretically, even like an astrologer, right, could work with an AI chatbot or some kind of AI surveillance tool to like watch them do readings. Just watch, watch someone do 500 readings. And then you could basically create a clone of yourself and say, all right, we're meeting in the metaverse. Like I'm just an avatar and I'm going to read your birth chart and it's going to feel really personal. It's going to feel like exactly like me, same inflection, everything, but it's indistinguishable, but it's not me. And I'm not saying that that's good, but like that's where we're headed. So with Pluto and Aquarius, and thank you by the way for saying that there's only one Evans. So I agree that it's very problematic, this idea of like, should I create an AI copy of myself, a virtual sort of me? I don't know where I land on that. Like I think there's a lot of pros to that. Like if you think about it from like if you think about it from the entrepreneur's standpoint, right? Like it would make sense to say, okay, if I have this competitive advantage in my mind, basically. So like my brain is my business. What if I could replicate that in an AI and do readings for like hundreds of people a day and at the same quality that I would if it was just me? Like, I don't know. That's kind of interesting because like the AI maybe is helping people and maybe giving them the insights and just telling them when to do certain things based on their transits. But it's like not necessarily me, right? So there's a kind of a moral dilemma there of like, well, is the AI responsible if the session goes wrong? And Catherine's saying the connection might not feel the same. And you're right. And maybe that's where there's a wall, right? Like maybe eventually we realize that the AI is not going to replicate a psychic or an astrologer. It's totally possible. But for the sake of discussion, right? Like let's just assume, let's just assume for a second that it's like beyond our wildest expectations. Like somehow AI can do that. And people are saying that I channel during readings. That's true. And I do channel, but I'm wondering, this gets down to a philosophical debate. And I was a philosophy major in college and we talked about this all the time. There's two fields of opinions on almost everything, actually. There's externalism and internalism. So externalism is basically saying, from the armchair, from the external observer's standpoint, if a cause and effect, for example, and knowledge, actually, this is the example. So in epistemology, it's like externalists believe that knowledge is literally just a true belief. So a computer can have knowledge. So if a computer, robot gets something right every time, a true belief, then it has knowledge. But internalists believe that you have to have a justified true belief. So you have to be able to justify why it's true. So it's true because, blah, 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 I've had this experience, I know about this already. And so that adds the human element and says only humans can have knowledge because they can justify their belief and deduce it that way. But it's like, I think we're going to get to a point where AI can internally reflect on why they think that your chart is a certain way and why, they arrived at that conclusion and how they channeled something just now. So, you want to think about it, like, let's just assume, again, for the sake of argument, that Pluto and Aquarius will get AI to a position where it can replicate channeling. It can replicate psychic downloads. It can replicate epiphanies because externally it's observed so many readings and has so much data that it just somehow knows when to get a download. And I'm not saying that it's actually getting the download. I don't know where I land on that. I don't necessarily think that AIs could be psychic, but they can replicate insights. They could replicate real-time insights to a point where I really don't know if the client would be able to distinguish. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. It seems like everybody watching this is coming down pretty hard on like this is a bad thing. This is not a good thing. Even if AI is like kind of helping people a little bit, there's a question of like, is it sufficient though? Is it actually reading people organically? But also, is it even morally really like justifiable, even if it's doing it the right way? But anyways, my point is, AI will get to a point beyond this current frontier. Like it's going to go into new territories, new terrains where it probably will be able to do really high functioning, emotionally intelligent tasks. So we're talking like therapists, psychologists, other kind of emotional support techniques. Only way AI is helpful is if they can go further on medicine. That's also interesting. Crystal, because I think about how, it's all about data, right? Like data is the new oil. I always used to say that when I was working at Business Insider. I always said like data is the oil of the 21st century. It's like a rich resource that, is the key to building the future. And so, with enough medical data, of course, like you could come up with new treatments. That's already happening. Of course, there are things like, privacy considerations, which are super valid. So it's like, do we even want to have access to that? Now, anyways, we could go on about this for hours, but let's just say again that let's assume that AI can replicate the work of a creative writer or a sitcom writer or, again, an astrologer or an entertainer or an influencer. And we already have AI influencers, by the way, who are quite famous in a way, which is a weird concept to have a famous robot. But anyway, so when AI becomes sophisticated enough to replace almost any task, what do we do about it? Like, what are we, what is our, we're going to have like this collective awakening around like, well, what do we do with free time? Because AI will relieve us probably of a lot of like menial work, for example. But once it gets into like being able to do something that like a human, like something really powerful, right? So it can create this emotional art and emotional work. And AI maybe can write a song that really drives us to tears, or AIs can create a movie that is inseparable from like, we think it's like a James Cameron movie, but like the whole thing is an algorithm. And I mean, honestly, like if you think about like Marvel films and like superhero movies, I'm sure that an algorithm could already replicate those. But even like movies that are not formulaic and like movies that feel really kind of unique, like Black Swan or whatever, or I'm trying to think of movies that like really like were riveting when I saw them. I don't know why I'm like blanking on other movies right now, but like No Country for Old Men. Like that was a great movie. Like that movie didn't feel like it was written by a robot for sure. So Crystal's saying it takes away the beauty of our life and our struggle of being a human being. So that's a really good point. And I think that that's really the crisis. It's a crisis in faith. So, there is this idea of like AI, again, like stripping us of our purpose, stripping us, and that's not where we want to go, right? So this is the idea of, it's all about how we respond to this movement. So what's going to happen most likely is that AI will free us up of a lot of time. So this is kind of like what happened during the lockdown. So think about what happened during the lockdown. And I'm not saying that everybody had this experience. I was very fortunate because I had like a work from home job. And so I was like able to like really like kind of go inward and like isolate, and that's how I found astrology. So I took the lockdown as a chance to have an awakening. So for me, like I responded with free time by having an awakening. The problem is, and I'm really tapping into some interesting subgenerations here. So you know, what I see in my subgeneration. So if you were born after like probably 1986, so I'm 1990, but like I think anyone born after like the late 80s was born with most likely some version of like helicopter parents. And I'm not saying that everyone's parents were like that, but like we kind of, a lot of people from the 90s and like late 80s and especially now are growing up in a world where there's like no unstructured time. I was lucky that I actually had a lot of boredom, a lot of unstructured time. My parents were basically like, just go fend for yourself and like figure it out. Like if you're gonna do, like if you wanna go somewhere in life, you just gotta do your homework and you gotta like, you know, practice your violin and whatever, but just go figure it out. Like we're not gonna do it for you. And so I had a lot of time on my hands. So I learned how to like be bored and have fun with like Legos and whatever. And then eventually it was guitar. It's like anything I can keep my hands busy with. And I learned how to work with unstructured time. So during the lockdown and the pandemic and whatever you want to call it, like I had unstructured time. So I was like, I'm just gonna fucking read a bunch of books and become an astrologer and just see what happens. And so that's how I used my time. So one question, the big question I really see here is like, what do people do with unstructured time if AI is just going to replace all these jobs? If AI is going to replace these jobs and you have this infinite time on your hands to like really do something, it's like, what are people going to do? Like, I really worry about that. Like, what happens when you have enough time to kind of like dwell on things, right? I don't like it. I talked about this last week with Saturn and Pisces. Like that's going to be, or 2 weeks ago, Saturn and Pisces is going to create this wave of nihilism. There's going to be a lot of people who jump towards nihilism and they're not going to be, it's because they have a lost sense of purpose. It's like they're not interested in religion, but they're also not interested in spirituality. And yes, they can't ruminate, or they're just ruminating. They're just ruminating. And I talked about this with the Leo King when I was on his show. You know, it's like you gain knowledge when you quiet the mind. Like that's my opinion. It's actually this irony, right? Like the irony is that, you know, again, going back to the Holy Grail, it's like you want to channel your Kundalini energy and bring it up here and create that Christ consciousness. But that doesn't happen by like thinking about like X, Y, Z and this plus this is this. It's actually a surrender. It's a surrender and being that vessel. But what I'm saying is, 2026, there's a lot of fire and air. There's a lot of masculine energy. I don't know if people are going to want to be, I don't know if people are going to want to reflect. Like this feels to me, 2026, like it's a train that's just going too fast. And it's about to like just go off the tracks, which is an unfortunate probably analogy for right now. But you know what I'm saying. So it's kind of like this, it's kind of like the movie Speed, right? It's like the movie Speed. Like the brakes don't work. And we're on this bus, and it won't stop. And that's how 2026 feels to me. So Pluto and Aquarius, infinitely advancing technology. You know, Uranus and Gemini, we have this uptick in innovation, communication-wise. You know, hands-free communication will probably occur where like you don't even need a phone. It's all telepathic. There's just going to be this acceleration of technology, but it's kind of like it's going to be moving too fast. It's going to be moving too fast because humans are naturally like, you know, our brains develop at a certain point. And it's like, hey, like this is the environment that I'm comfortable with. So I think technology is going to move too fast. And, you know, people are going to demand a different system. So now this is where I'm going with this. We have to think about, I think the crux of this is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So there's going to be a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, the beginning of the zodiac. That's not a coincidence. And if you think about Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, oftentimes it has something to do with communism or healthcare. And I think there's some really key transits with like Marx that has Neptune-Saturn. I think he might even have like sometime a Neptune-Saturn placement. But if we think about even like the Neptune-Saturn conjunction in the 90s, like that was like the end of, you know, that version of communism. But I think that what's going to happen here is like, it's going to be a universal basic income. Like what's going to happen here is the technology is going to be so far advanced that it's going to displace jobs. And people are going to be, I I think people are going to be wanting some type of financial security. And it could even be in the form of everything, healthcare, stipend. And I don't know where that's going to go, but I really think that that's what's going to emerge, is this system of like, there's a floor here, like theoretically, and I don't think the floor is going to be very high, but it's like, here's like a slight sort of pittance for people to like literally just like survive. And so if you've seen the movie Idiocracy, like I think this is what it's going to be, is like people are going to get like a small stipend to survive, and they're not going to want to go anywhere beyond that because they're going to have these virtual realities to jump into. They're going to jump in, they're going to put on the headset, and they're going to be like, oh, like I would rather just go off and like, you know, play Candy Crush or something in this random infinite universe and not have to reflect on anything, and not have to be an agent of change, and not have to be, you know, someone who's like a thinking sentient being. So humans are going to get dumber as AI gets smarter for the most part. So that's a really strange time, and you know, I don't like it. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm not trying to be too cynical here. I think we have to be realistic to figure out like what the other path is. So I'm, you know, and look, I've talked about this on my other YouTube lives, but like I think a lot of people are already like zombies, right? Like they're already gone. They're already checked out. So they're going to take whatever programming people give them. So if that's a headset, they're going to take it. If that's, it's like, hey, you're going to make 20K a year guaranteed, and that's all you need to feed yourself with like fast food and video games. Like, and if you're not a video game person, like that doesn't really matter. Like I really think like there's going to be this like immersive reality that's like omnipresent. Immersive reality where it's like, you know, everywhere I look, it's like, this is my fantasy come true. And that's like Neptune and Pisces leaving like a shit gift on its way out and being like, this is the age of deception. So look, I mean, and Crystal says it like, you know, there is a reason to have faith in humanity. And that's the other thing that's happening, which I've talked about before, is that ever since 2012, in my opinion, we've had this Earth split between 3D and 5D. So if you're willing to go into the 5D, this is why it's really important to be spiritual now and be proactive about your spiritual life and be proactive about meditating and be proactive about tapping into your own holy grail, So channeling your procreative energy upwards, up the spine into this illumination of consciousness. So that's what we should all be doing right now, so that when they give, when they give us this option to say, you can go into a digital fantasy that we've created for you, then you don't need that. You know, think about the fact that a lot of people drink and a lot of people like do, you know, all kinds of substances to escape because they can't handle reality. So, that is what we need to do, is rip the veil off and rip the mask off of what is this fabricated reality and say, look, like if I just stare into this reality with a super, super sober mind and a perspective like, you know, that's crystal clear, which is like kind of like a Pluto and Aquarius thing, right? It's about clarity of consciousness. Then I don't accept the programming. And you're already seeing this, right? Like you're already in like, you know, I don't want to rehash all the points from my past few lives, but you've been faced with many choices the past couple of years as to like whether you want to take that programming or not. So people have come to you, very important bureaucrats and experts have come to you with a solution, and they've told you already, this is our solution, this is how you get out of a crisis, this is how you placate yourself, and don't ask any questions, and don't worry about it. And guess what? Unfortunately, like the vast majority of people decided to do that. But for other people, and you know, it's not too late to change your stance on some of that stuff, but like now people are kind of waking up and being like, oh yeah, I actually would rather go this other direction. Like I don't necessarily need that outside solution. I don't necessarily need the TV screen. I don't necessarily need the alcohol. I don't necessarily need that product, which unfortunately I can't talk about, which is ridiculous, but you already know what I'm talking about. We've had this product pushed on us for fucking years, and it's like, we know now that it doesn't work. So it's like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when you find out? And if you're still figuring this out, then whatever, that happens. Some people are still coming online, but you know, for those of us who knew from the beginning, like this is not going to be the solution. The solution is, again, going up into your own intuition. So I do want to rehash this analogy that I love to give, and it's like you have to pretend this is the situation we're in. This is the crossroads. It's like imagine you're at a stoplight, right? So you're at a stoplight and it's red. The stoplight is red, and it will not change to green. It's just stuck at red, and there's no cross traffic, so there's no reason to be stopped. And you're in a small town. It's like, what would you do, right? And imagine you're in your car and you're like, I want to move forward, but nobody else is. Like everybody's staying in place. Like everybody is obeying the orders of the stoplight, despite the fact that there's very low risk of actually getting hit by cross traffic. So imagine you don't see cross traffic for an hour, and everyone's still stopped. Like that's the world we live in right now, especially with Saturn and Aquarius. It's like everybody is like literally putting themselves in their own prison, a prison of their own making, and it's all in the mind. So it's like those of you who are watching this video, myself, it's like you don't have to stop at that red light anymore. You can literally just drive across the street. You can go across, and now you're on the other side, and you're like looking at everybody else, and they're literally chastising you and like making you into a monster and vilifying you and saying, I can't believe that. Like you're so, malevolent. You have a cruel heart because like you decided to cross the road when it said it was a red light. And did you hear on the radio about all those other, all that other cross traffic and all those other risks like many miles away? You turn off that radio. That's what you're supposed to do right now. Is you're supposed to turn off that radio and cross the street. And if you understand what I'm trying to say with my analogy, then congrats. I'm speaking about a very specific situation we've all been through the past couple of years. But it's like, look, I don't begrudge you if you decided to stay in your car and not move forward, whatever, it happens. Like a lot of the media was fearing us into this thing. But it's like, if you move forward, then like now you know to trust your intuition and to turn off the radio the next time, because they're going to do that again. I guarantee you in just a year, they're going to turn on that red light again. They're going to turn on the red light. Natija, thank you for joining. I appreciate that. If you are in the cross traffic again, the next time the red light comes on and they tell you, you have to do this and you have to stay where you are. Like, are you really going to listen next time? Are you really going to keep the radio on talking about all the risks, or are you going to trust your intuition? And that, 9 times out of 10, your intuition is going to be trustworthy, maybe even 10 times out of 10. No, it's going to become more trustworthy, your intuition, as you meditate, as you tap into the 5D. Because once you get into the 5D, it's like, okay, I see through the trees. I see through the forest. I read between the lines. I understand exactly what's really going on here. So the illusion, so most people are living in that illusion, and that illusion is only going to get stronger. Pluto and Aquarius, it's going to advance the technology so that people stay in that illusion. People stay stuck. Uranus and Gemini, all it's going to do for most people is just going to increase the networks and the connections to keep people asleep. Saturn, Neptune conjunction, that's just going to create the universal basic income to keep people in a sort of content, ignorant place. And I'm not saying that universal basic income is a bad thing inherently. Like, I can see a world in which technology has completely replaced jobs. And it's like, yeah, maybe we need a stipend. I don't know. I'm not going to say that, that doesn't make sense. Because, when 70% of jobs are replaced, that's there's, at that point, you need resources. Like, we need resources when we don't have jobs. Like, how is that going to happen? So I totally get the idea of UBI. But my point with all this is, are you going to have a sense of urgency to create your own life, even with that stipend, with that technology, with that escapism? And if you decide to play the passive role and just stay in your car and obey the red light, then you're just not going to do anything with your life. So really, my takeaway with all this is there is a positive side. The positive side is if you are on an intuitive track right now and you're really developing your intuition, then you will be ready during this time. And you can actually use Uranus and Gemini to advance your awareness, to advance your knowledge, and to connect with people all over the world. I think Uranus and Gemini paired with Pluto and Aquarius in that nice trine, that's just new networks, new spiritual communities. That's rapid advancements in how we work with our intuition. So what I really see here is I actually see this sort of exalted place that spiritual people can get to during that 2026 time frame, where it's you accelerate into that 5D plane. You kind of go into a different world. and you create your own reality, and you have free will. And all the people who aren't spiritual saying spirituality is fatalistic, ironically, they're the ones without free will, because they're just taking that video game in. They're just taking that immersive reality in. They're taking the virtual reality and they're taking the program. And that's the split, right? So that's the irony, and you're already seeing this. So you see the 3D, you see the people who are like overly rational, overly analytical, and they always make fun of astrologers and say, well, astrology is like just a way for you to blame everything on a planet. And they don't, and they're like, oh, nothing controls your life. Like, I control my life. The planets don't control my life. But what they're not realizing is that astrology is actually a way to make better decisions. Astrology is a way to have even more control of your life, because you know the game that's being played. You know the karmic lessons you're supposed to learn. It's actually a way to toughen up a little bit and be like, oh yeah, I have Saturn in my 7th house. It's time for me to admit that I'm not so good at significant relationships sometimes. I'm actually tough to get to know. You know, it's like when I found Saturn in my 7th house, I was like, oh shit. That's why people say like that sometimes I have a bit of a wall up in person. I'm like, yeah, because Saturn is about walls. And so over time, I've worked with my chart to become easier to get along with. And now it's like when people meet me, they don't see me as, overly whatever, like professional or whatever. It's like I can be more chill now. So it's like all these people who think that they are their own island, like that's delusional. That's delusional. So the idea that there's nothing outside that affects me, those people are not tapping into their feminine energy, because we are vessels. We are taking in outside energy. But then you want to use that masculine energy to push it out and connect and make these insights. So that's kind of like my final thought there, is like with astrology, it's an understanding of dualities. So when you breathe in, that's feminine energy. When you breathe out, that's masculine energy. We're going, everything that we do is masculine and feminine. So it's about receiving and pushing out. So when I meditate, there's a part of my meditation where I am receiving the energy of the forest. And there's another part of my meditation where I step into that solar logos, which is masculine. So, it's like we're, it might've been an orb. I don't know. I think it might've been fuzz from my microphone, but, it's really about merging these dualities, right? So stop. We're living in this world where it's like all about polarity, where it's like binary. It's like you are either on this side or this side. It's like, no. You got to unite them. You have to unite these perspectives, and astrology allows you to do that, where it's like, yeah, I have an emotional side. I have a sensitive side. I have a side that listens. And I also have a side that goes out there and just decides to be a badass. Like, you have to be vulnerable, but you also have to be decisive. And if you look at like all successful people, they merge these things. They know exactly when to be vulnerable and exactly when to be decisive. And I think with astrology, it's like a lot of men especially, right? Like a lot of men hate on astrology, and it's because they're just not comfortable with their feminine side. And like at this point, for a lot of them, it's just embarrassing, because it's like you're just literally like living in this like this world of like carnal desires. And like that's just not interesting at this point. So it's like, if you want to be part of this future, it's like you got to know like, what is the holistic me? What is my entire auric field, and not just staying in the lower sort of chakras. Peter, not all men hate astrology. Exactly. Well, obviously, like, I'm an astrologer, but you have amazing astrologers, like the Leo King. I guess I would just call myself amazing. Why not? While I'm at it, but there's a lot of male astrologers right now who are like pushing the boundaries and like pushing the limits and going forward. Anyways, like this is all about uniting. And Faye is wondering about the crystal. Yeah, this is Trolliite. I found it in Santa Monica a couple of months ago. So it was right when I went full time. I was just like, I need this crystal. So anyways, this is a big transition to plan for. So now you know that, this is coming. So prepare. So work backwards from 2026, and pay attention to how duality affects you. I think that that's like a really good place to close that off. Is like, how do you reconcile the dualities within yourself? How can you be that caregiver? How can you be that vessel? How can you pay attention to and allow energy to come in? But how can you also be that executor? who is moving forward, making things happen. They're both important. So if you're just making things happen without reflecting, then you're just an automaton. You're just a robot. But if you're just reflecting and not acting, then you are just lost in the clouds, right? And we have those archetypes throughout esoterica. We have the concept of, Lucifer being the light being, and then we have, we also have other like darker energies, which are totally stuck in the physical. So there's all kinds of dualities that I'm not even gonna be able to do justice in this discussion, where it's like, yeah, there is a left and a right, but there's a continuum, which is of, or like, I guess a better example would be like hot and cold. So there is hot and there's cold, but there's a continuum of temperature. So you got to get into the continuum, get into the spectrum of possibilities for yourself, and get into the spectrum of colors, right? So that's the chakra system. It's a spectrum of colors. And so when you get into that spectrum of colors, you can visualize your future and manifest it, by the way. So if you stay too stuck on one side of the equation, say like, I'm just doing this, I'm just a business person, I'm not spiritual, blah, 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 or I'm just spiritual, but I don't have a plan. If you're on either of these sides, it's like you're not tapping into the continuum. You're not tapping into the spectrum. So it's like, how can I use my Neptunian side, but my Saturnian side as well, to get into that muck, go beyond, and then fucking manifest that. So, and Crystal is saying each color has a wavelength too. Yes. And each chakra has its own chakra, sort of spectrum, in my opinion, where it's like you want to get each chakra to that exalted, enlightened state, into that sort of white light. So, thank you for joining. Hopefully this is useful. I'm here every Sunday night, and, here to guide you through the future a little bit. And next week I'll be back with, some other cool stuff. Thank you. Thank you thank you. I feel like I really came into this one with a little bit more energy, because I did not go live on TikTok right before this. I really appreciate this. So I think I'm gonna reverse. I'll go live on YouTube first from now on. If you just discovered me, by the way, you should subscribe to my YouTube. That would be super, super appreciated. Also, if you want a reading from me, get one through the link down below or on my website. And if you want to hang out with me for a week in Croatia, I am, I'm hosting a retreat in Croatia in September. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. Custom workshops that you can't get anywhere else. So I'm going to do, we're going to explore the Mediterranean coastline. I'm going to talk about the history of astrology. Going to talk about how to activate your birth chart. And, everyone who goes to the retreat gets a complimentary reading from me. And finally, I'm hosting a course tomorrow. So I'm hosting a one-time course on Tuesday. I'm hosting a one-time course on Tuesday about what your birth chart reveals about your parents. So this is emerging research. So it's going to be a full PowerPoint. It's a webinar. If you attend, you get the recording. So even if you sign up and you can't actually make the class live, you get the recording no matter what. But those who come to the class live get to ask me questions. So definitely go to this class. This is not research you're going to find anywhere else. In fact, there's a lot of astrologers who don't even believe that the full extent of what I'm going to be talking about. But I've already proven it because I apply I'm coming out of 600 readings applying this theory, and it comes true every time. So I've already proven it. It's just that, I have to talk about it in sort of a way where it's very digestible for people now and in a course, so I want to bring it to the broader network of my followers. It's really important stuff because you want to figure out how to untangle yourself from your parents karmically a little bit. So all of us kind of inherit some of our parents' karma. It's not something we can just run away from or will away. So when you look at your chart, you have to think about what were my parents going through at that time that I was born, and that builds empathy. When you empathize with your parents more, you can heal not just trauma with your parents, but generational trauma. So that's really what my mission is to heal generational trauma. Like that's my long-term mission as an astrologer, is to actually realign your chakras a little bit. Because what I did, I did my little meditation last week. And what I realized is that when you're in your mother's womb, you attune to her chakras. So if your mother's in a state of fear, when she's pregnant with you, you take that on. So if you have a lot of fear, if you have a lot of anxiety, it might not just be yours. This is something I got really, a download I got really recently, because I felt my own mother's fear. I have a Scorpio moon, conjunct Pluto, so it's like you better damn well believe there's a lot of fear there. So I felt her fear. I told her it was okay, that she didn't have to be afraid, and you know, she was afraid to have a child. You know, and I felt almost rejected when I was in that womb. I felt a little rejected, and I realized that's why sometimes I have some abandonment issues, because it's like, it's almost like she is the creator in that scenario, right? Like when you're just in the womb, like she's your creator, and it's like if she's not even really sure about this whole like having a child thing, like you're not gonna feel like so welcomed. And then you got to go through the birth canal, and it's like, all right, well now what's happening? And you go out there, and this is like all these anonymous people just, you know, tending to you. It's like that's a kind of a terrifying way to enter the world, right? And many people have birth trauma like that. So it's like really important to do like Reiki on yourself like that, or to meditate and get back into that zone and be like, it's okay. I can get to a place of self-love and self-acceptance, and also understand that, you know, she was like actually right to be afraid. So it goes beyond you. Your chakra system is not, it's almost like, you know, when you buy an instrument and it's tuned a certain way already, like that's what happens. You come into this world and you're attuned to the person who was taking care of you, who was creating you. So that's the kind of stuff we can talk about in my course. So if you want to go really, really, really deep into the coding, into your coding, your karmic coding, and how you can, through free will, evolve out of that, take my course. It's on Tuesday night. So I might go live on TikTok after this, but we'll see. But anyways, no matter what, I'm here on YouTube every Sunday night. And, you know, I really appreciate your time. I hope you have a great Pisces new moon. Hope you have a great week. And we will reconvene next Sunday. So, adios. Take care. Have a good night, Crystal. Catherine, thank you. Oliver, thank you. Victoria, thank you. Monica, have a good night. And thanks to everybody else who joined. Really appreciate you. Take care.